Adrian, welcome to the barbecue. It's a pleasure to have you here. I'm glad I had a chance to meet you at Lavoie's funeral. How are you?
I'm doing well. Enjoying this nice, bright, sunny day here in New Mexico.
Well, it'll be evening by the time we play this, so that's great. Here's my question. What's going on?
Well, actually, my contract is with the U.S. Forest Service. So it's another entity that manages land, so to speak, equivalent to, but they hold more land than the BLM actually does. They're in charge of more acreage in the U.S. than
Right,
the
all
BLM.
part of the Department of Interior, right?
Soon after I signed, I guess maybe 24 hours later, I started to receive personal threats, not only to my person, but to my family, my wife and children, also my parents, and they live in another state. And then someone, which I've been now informed is an attorney from Tennessee, created a Facebook page known as Public Lands Hunt Club. And I have never been on the site personally. I've seen people have sent me screenshots and pictures, and there are people aware. And the complaints have, I don't know how many complaints these people have received or that Facebook has received to take this this Facebook page down. But what they ask for people to do on their Facebook page, Public Lands Hunt Club, is to go out and shoot cattle and or horses, livestock, I guess, in general, that are grazing on federal lands on these grazing allotments. They already have claimed to have killed 2 cows in recent times. They show some pictures of people next to dead cattle and stuff like that. And it's interesting that when I became outspoken about this Mexican gray wolf reintroduction down in New Mexico and Arizona, soon after I attended several meetings, I had 2 cattle shot on my ranch. And so it's a little alarming. The threat is real.
Yeah, the threat's very real. So when you say you received threats, how did you receive them? Were they by phone? Were they by mail, email? How were you threatened?
I've received threats over social media. I received threats in the mail. Since I have an unlisted phone number and don't have a landline, I guess it's hard to get a cell phone. So I haven't received anything threatening over the telephone just because I believe many people don't have my number.
Well, that's pretty interesting. Now, if you and I did this, if we went out and threatened people, there'd be a SWAT team at our door by morning. How is it these people are getting away with this?
That's a good question. I know that my attorney, I know that my congressman and several other people, important elected officials have contacted Facebook to take this down. They will not. So we're not, really don't understand what's going on.
Well, it's Bolshevik America, my friend.
Right.
You're a Texan by birth, and so I always ask people how'd they wake up, and you said you were born awake. So tell me more about that.
Well, I know there's several misconceptions about Texas, and I embrace them all. And sometimes people say, well, what can you tell a Texan? Nothing. They already know it. There's all these sayings and stuff about Texans. Texas is known all over the world, and I think that there's a different spirit in Texas just due to the fact of the independent nature of the landscape and of the state itself, and which its history everybody knows. And so I think, that's like you said, when did you wake up? I don't know. I think I was always born awake. I was just always been leery of the status quo, so to speak.
Right. And so you grew up in ranching, but your dad was also in oil contracts and things?
Yes. Yeah, grew up ranching. I guess that makes me a 6th-generation rancher. My family homestead a particular part of Texas before it was even a republic. I guess, I feel like I have a fighting nature. And so I get lots of questions of people over here in New Mexico. Well, why did you move to New Mexico? They might ask. And so I tell them, well, I'm just like everyone else in Texas, and I saw that you guys needed some help, so I came over here to help fight.
So your family's land in Texas that you grew up on. Who ranch is that now? Do you still have it? Is it sold? What's going on?
Well, that's been passed down through the years. We have several homesteads that are historical monuments recognized by the State of Texas Historical Society. And so other family members, unfortunately, some get sold off. And that was kind of part of the reason why I moved to New Mexico. It's just, there wasn't enough really to go around. And so I was like, okay, well, some of these people that are, closer in line for inheritance and stuff than I am, instead of, getting mad or selling it off, and you know how those things happen after deaths and stuff during families.
When there's a will, there's a relative. That's what we say.
Sure. So I just decided, my wife and I decided, hey, we have this dream. I've been to college for livestock marketing and pursued animal science degrees and stuff of that nature. And like I said, grew up in it and decided, well, we're just going to take off on our own endeavor. And so we looked for 2 years and finally settled on a place here in Southwest New Mexico. We actually bought the ranch from a widow whose husband was murdered on the ranch, and it's still unsolved to this day. And his murder was, I believe, in 2007.
Wow.
So this ranch had a violent history prior to us coming here. With his murder, they had quite a few livestock, horses and cattle shot, poached, or whatever you call it, and butchered on this ranch. So we knew coming in there were dangers, but being the Texan, you don't really, you're not going to let that deter you.
Well, that's a pretty fascinating story. We need to send somebody over there to do some energy work on your land and clear off whatever energy's going on there.
And being within, relatively close proximity to the border, we have those issues as well. And those issues seem like they really get swept under the table here. Not many people are paying attention, or they are, and they're just ignoring it. So, we have those issues as well.
Right. That's closing our borders is a number one priority if we're going to keep this country. But obviously, the powers that be are destroying this country, not trying to preserve it.
I would agree with that completely.
Right. When did you become aware of Ammon and Lavoie and Ryan Bundy and the group, what they were doing, and what brought you up to Oregon?
Well, I guess like most America, I got familiar with them during their 2014 standoff at their ranch. And, it was, so we talked about the awakening. And I guess when I moved here, I soon found out, wow, there's this reintroduction of the wolf, and there are ranchers getting livestock eaten, weekly by wolves. And then I found out for the first time, because I'd never heard of it before, but I found out about the Endangered Species Act. I just started to sit back and think, oh no, what have I got myself into? There's wolves, there's endangered species, there's these environmental people who want everybody off the land, and there's all these other theories and things that the government is doing, and it's just like, oh my goodness. So do I sell now, or do I put my foot down and try to fight some of this?
Well, the wolf situation's pretty interesting, and so you've obviously decided to put your foot down. And since Lavoie's murder, have you rethought that? You say, maybe was that the right decision for me? Are you questioning yourself yet?
Oh, well, I think with any decision with this much at stake, you question yourself. I've never doubted it, but of course, my family had to be removed from my ranch because we're so remote and the threats were so great. So my wife was very concerned, and anytime, we're together every day. She works, she's a homemaker, so she stays home, and I'm in and out all day, and our son goes with me, and our daughters, they're too little to go, so they stay home. So her being away has added another level of stress, I guess.
Yeah.
It's just not the same without your family at home.
Because this is a big deal, and if the government really wants to do something, they know exactly where they are. So
I might add that like I said, I've been outspoken against this wolf, and that actually, I think it was July 14th. I know it was the day before that Operation Jade Helm started here in the Southwest. I just tied up my horse and walked to the house, and my wife wasn't home, actually. She was gone to town, and I was eating a bite of lunch, and I had a knock at my door, and I didn't see anybody pull up, but I knew my ranch hand was here, so I assumed it was him. I didn't know why he was knocking and not just coming in, so I went down the hall and looked out the window, and I saw 3 men in 3 pickups. They were in plain clothes, so I walked out the door and asked them, "Hey, how can I help you?" I was pretty surprised because people don't just show up at my door. It's not easy to find. And they presented themselves, and one was an FBI agent, and 2 were U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services. And so I asked, "Well, what do you want?" Of course. And the first question out of their mouth was, "Are you an extreme rancher?" And I just, I guess I kind of laughed, and I said, "Well, what is an extreme rancher?" In which they didn't answer. "Well, then do you know any other ranchers that you would classify or deem as extreme?" And I said, "Wait, what is going on? What Anyway.
Wow. Well, they're coming up with this new classification for people, extremists. We're extremists.
Exactly.
Yeah, we're extreme Americans.
Right. Questioning went on, and it just kept staying on ranchers. And anyway, I don't know, but that was like I said, in July. So I know that they've been deeming me extreme or whatever for a good while now.
And the wolf thing, let's just get people up to date. I know in Montana, the T-shirt is "Shoot, shovel, and shut up." The introduction of the wolves that they've put in there have been very destructive to Montana, and I'm sure other places around there. What's going on with New Mexico?
Same thing. Different species, they claim, although, the taxonomy and the DNA, that's all up for debate, of course. And but this wolf is supposedly a subspecies of the gray wolf. It's referred to as the Mexican gray wolf. When most common sense people and other scientists, depends on which, where the science, who he works for, who
Right.
their opinion is,
Right, who their paycheck comes from.
A lot of people believe that it's a smaller wolf because this part of the country is more arid, less water. The game is more sparse, and where their primary food source here would be deer, as in, Wyoming or Montana, it would be elk. So that they say they're actually not a subspecies, they're just smaller due to the landscape that they evolved in.
Is that what you believe?
That's, my uneducated opinion, but my common sense opinion from the research and things I've read and accounts I know about. I believe, yeah. I mean, it's just like, for instance, a mountain lion or a bear in the desert here in the Southwest is going to be, on average, smaller than one from Idaho. There's no question about that. So, yeah, I believe that's true. It's true in other species. Why wouldn't it be true here? In this case, of the Mexican gray wolf.
Makes sense. Okay, just checking.
Right. Well, what it is a government entity, this reintroduction of wolves that is preying upon private property. Being cattle, they're private property. Whether they're on federal land or not, they're still private property. These government wolves are preying on and depredating and feeding on and living on our private property. And so that's why everybody's up in arms.
Well, we can't get too far into this conversation without Agenda 21 coming up. They are forcing ranchers off the land. I mean, here in Clark County, 52 ranchers, one's left. He's in prison. He's in jail right now. So we know this situation has been an orchestrated attempt by the extreme, radicalized environmental agenda. And it comes down to Agenda 21. What's your take on that, Adrian?
Well, I've read a little bit about that theory, and I can see things on the ground myself that prove it to be true. In fact, I've been to a couple of presentations, and I believe there's something to it. It's one of those. Well, in the beginning, I felt like, oh, this is just some conspiracy theory. What is going on? There's always, it's always something like this. But as I did a little more research, I began to see that no, this is probably true and something to definitely be aware of.
Right. When did you decide to go up to Oregon? I know it was the night I was on the air. I was calling Lavoie, and Jeanette answered the phone and said, "Hold on, he'll be right with you." They had just come from picking you up in Boise. So what made you decide to go up?
So I guess, I touched on earlier, the first, I saw the Bundys and their standoff, and that's when I really began to pay attention. And I was always kicking myself because I didn't go. And like I told Lavoie, I had my horse saddled, I had the trailer hooked up, but the horse wasn't in the trailer. And I watched it very closely. And I told my wife, we had those conversations where we cried together and we prayed together, and I wanted to go so bad, but and fortunately that was diffused. But I knew that if I told my wife, if they kill Cliven, or if one person is murdered there, I'm going. There's no doubt. And so I didn't go, didn't have to go. Thank goodness, thank God. There wasn't any bloodshed there. And so I began to keep an eye on it. And then I saw this, the iconic picture of Lavoie. And so I knew that when, I'm looking at the picture right now, actually. I never forgot it because he's on his horse and he's kind of got a smile on his face, and there's other horsemen in the background, and there's that American flag.
Yeah, that's quite a photograph.
Yes, it is. So when I saw him, I came across him, of course, on social media, and then I saw, oh, that's that guy from the picture. What is he saying? And so I started, because I was like, wow, it went from a picture to him being in real life, or to being, on the computer, and what he was saying was, there was just no doubt he was telling the truth, and it was just coming. The things he was saying were really hitting home, and then you start to realize, wow, I didn't know he was a rancher at that point, and you start to see his story, and it builds and builds and builds, and of course now we've all seen all these YouTube videos of him and stuff, and he was forming his legacy then and establishing himself in this fight. And everything he said resonated with me. And so I've heard some people say, well, you were recruited. No, I didn't have to be recruited. I called them. They didn't call me. So, but I was very much motivated by their cause and what they were saying. And so I called up, or I messaged Jeanette over Facebook, and I said, hey, I want to, after they went to the refuge and started protesting there, I was like, oh my gosh, I told my wife, I said, I'm not missing this. I'm not missing this. And there's my chance to show my support. And so I got in contact with Lavoie, and I told him what I wanted to do, and immediately I came running.
Wow. And okay, so you've seen Lavoie in videos, you've seen him in photographs, you've talked to his wife. What was your first impression of him when you met him in person?
Well, I thought he would be taller.
Yeah, he's a giant of a man, but in small stature, yes. Right?
And so that exactly, you summed it up perfectly. Just this giant of a man, of a soul, of a human, and I was amazed. I felt right at home with him. I felt like I can open up completely. It's just one of those times when you feel like, wow, you've known this person forever. So it was a great feeling. And then to meet Jeanette at the same time as well, it made it all more complete because I could see his better half, and understand and visit with her and see their camaraderie and understand who they were as a family. So that helped a lot that she was there as well.
Yeah, that's amazing. You get to see them together. The funeral, I don't think I've ever been as touched by memories that the girls shared of him, in the son shared. That was an amazing service, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. And then, I guess up into the funeral, I was still kind of in shock. And in fact, it took me 3 or 4 days before I even watched the video footage of him being murdered. And so, I guess I felt like most people do when in a serious situation. I was still in shock a bit. And, unlike I've experienced a lot of death in my life, much like everybody else, family and friends and stuff. But this one has been totally different. It's just that there's really, at the end of every day or at the beginning of every morning, there is no closure. You know that. The things have been left undone. And so it's all of our duty in order to show our respect for LaVoy and what he meant to us, to continue on with fighting the good fight for this cause and for the freedom of America.
Okay, well, we'll take turns, Adrian. It's my turn to cry now, and try not to both be
pretty good. I haven't cried in a few days, so sorry about that.
No, I'm already crying. I put myself on mute for a minute so I could cry a little bit. Yeah, it's stunning.
My tongue. I just try to bite my tongue real hard to hold back. So
I'll try that. I'll try that. I try to pinch my hand.
Okay.
That's what I do to keep myself from crying. But it's it's an amazing thing. So I thought LaVoy was the perfect complement to Ammon. What was your impression of Ammon when you met him?
Oh, I don't have the words to describe Ammon. And if you can, every message, every video, up until I went to Oregon, and even now, when he's releasing these statements from behind bars, I can't understand how anybody can turn away from his message. It's so powerful and so real.
And I think with those, Ammon and LaVoy and Ryan, and they embody that humble yet confident about what they speak, and I think it's just a combination that you can't get away from. People hear the message, and that's why it was resonating so heavily with people. These men did not have a personal agenda that they were trying to glorify themselves in any way. This was altruistic. That's what they are. They're willing to put their lives on the line for others, for our entire country.
Sure. And, the injustice that the Hammonds were suffering at the hand of the federal government, Ammon just couldn't take it.
Yeah.
And if there were more men like Ammon, and in fact now, I think about, wow, what would LaVoy want me to do in this situation, or what would Ammon say, or how would you articulate this? So it's made me a better person, and just by knowing these guys for the short amount of time that I have.
Yeah, because we just really like to lash out. I'm going to find a quote that somebody sent me the other day and share it with you in a minute. The Hammonds are 800 miles away in prison in California. Ammon, Ryan, and the rest are in jail. Obviously set up by Mark McConnell and others. It had to be somebody at the refuge that let that man in and had this thing all staged. How do you feel about the fact that their legislature in Oregon has voted not to reveal the shooter? Now that's kind of ridiculous. See, they're still spinning it. They're saying shooter. No, there's shooters. There were multiple shots fired from different people. How do you feel about this? I mean, is it outrageous to you as it is to me?
It's so outrageous that I can't even believe that it's real. I mean, it's like somebody is making this stuff up for like this best-selling book, to keep you hooked on every page, because what's being done is, I mean, So I see these people on the FBI watch list, these real terrorists, these Muslims, and most recently the one last week who went into a restaurant who was on the watch list and started chopping people up with a knife. How are they on the watch list and the Bundys and these patriots are locked up in jail? I don't understand that.
Yeah, it's absolutely amazing. It's Bolshevik America, basically. How I feel about it, and it's not like we're trying to take over the government. The government's already been taken over. We're just trying to take it back.
Sure.
I like this quote. It came to me from someone yesterday. It says, "The true warrior fights not because he hates the one in front of him, but because he loves those behind him."
That's a very good quote.
Yeah, I think that says a lot. And here you have, I think the government was very effective. They were caught by surprise at the Bundy standoff, completely caught by surprise by that. They probably knew militia were on their way because those groups are heavily infiltrated, but they did not count on the rest of the 3,000 people that showed up from everywhere in the country. That shocked them. And so that's why when they use this game theory to predict how people will react, they were very effective at keeping people away. Ammon had been calling for people to be ready for months to go because they were doing all these things like that, redress of grievances and stuff, and they weren't getting any response. So he just said, please be ready to mobilize. And that's why the government came out and held a gun to the Ammon's heads and said, tell Ammon Bundy to go away, that you don't want his help. And they definitely held the gun to their heads. They even threatened to kill him if they went out and spoke to the protests. So, right. And even that Saturday, the protests, when they wanted to come out and speak to people of that weekend, they were told that they would be shot in the head. They were told that they would, if they didn't tell Ammon to leave, that they were going to pick them up before the holidays and put them in a much less desirable prison.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's how they kept people away.
None of that surprises me at all. I'm not surprised by any of those statements at all.
Yeah, and so that's how they played it, because there were people saying to me, I know they went up for the Saturday protest but didn't stay. And then when they wanted to go back, but they said, why should we risk our life and liberty when these men aren't willing to stand up for their own?
Sure.
And so that kept a lot of people away, and that they don't want us there. And then Oath Keepers did that. So my hat's off to you for going when there wasn't a huge groundswell of support at that time. I'm impressed. Thank you so much for going and signing that, rescinding your contracts with the forestry department there. So that's a brave stand. And is your wife in agreement now? Is she supporting this decision?
She was in agreement before I left. We knew, or I guess the only thing we miscalculated would be the death threats from the public.
Yeah.
We never expected that at all.
Are you sure they're from the public? I'm sure they're from just agent provocateurs. I'm sure there's people on the payroll doing this.
Oh, I'm sure. Now after, like I've told other reporters and stations and stuff, I have never been a part of a protest in all my life. I guess there wasn't any issue big enough for me to get involved. I was always kind of like the rest of America. Well, it has anything to do with me. Why should I care? So I ate those words, and when he came knocking on my door, then I said, oh, wow. So I do understand to a degree how it's hard for America to stand up, for any issue when it doesn't concern them. We're kind of conditioned to that. And, it wasn't, so like I said, I've never joined a formal protest. And so I guess that one thing, we didn't expect to get death threats from wherever they came from. We didn't expect there to be a Facebook page calling for the murder of me and other ranchers and their cattle. And in fact, the day before yesterday in a county near me, there were 2 horses shot and killed on public land or on someone's grazing allotment.
Now what people don't understand now, maybe people that listen to the show, because I try to talk about it as much as possible, but explain, these ranchers have grazing rights. They're not privileges. on these,
Exactly.
and it's the
And
public lands. It's not federal lands. It's the public lands, and they're holding them unconstitutionally. I'm sure the Constitution of New Mexico reads very much the same as the one in Nevada.
one thing we all need to get straight on is the term public land or public domain were initially used to denote federally held land that was subject to disposition, meaning the extinguishment of federal title. And so, most enduringly, I'm reading from a book here. The public lands have been defined as those lands subject to sale or other disposal under the general land laws. So what happens is once, and if you look it up in like Black's Law Dictionary or whatever, when land it's only public until it's been sold or settled or has some other description put to it. So, in fact, now we don't even have any public lands. Everything's been homesteaded, everything's been allocated, everything's been improved and used on. And so the term public land isn't even true anymore because there is no more public land. It's federal land by definition that is actually, so like, for example, these grazing allotments. These grazing allotments were designated grazing reserves before 100 years before the Forest Service or BLM was ever created. And if you go back to Kearney's Code, and I believe that was in the 1700s, it was during territorial times where the United States adopted the laws and of the Spanish. And they adopted their grazing rights, their water rights, their brands, their earmarks, and all these different things there where they drove from summer to winter pasture. So these rights have been established since the 1500s by the Spanish. These have been grazing lands.
Yes, and when the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo happened, all that was transferred with the treaty.
Sure. Right. And like I said, the first treaty was the Kearney's Code. And then years later, yes, the Treaty of the Guadalupe Hidalgo, all those things transferred over. Our Supreme Court voted on and made them into law, the law of the land. And in fact, so these aren't permits. This isn't by permission that we're grazing these lands. This is by right.
Exactly.
And that's an important thing that people need to know. But everybody goes around, using this term public land. Well, no, they're actually not public lands anymore. They've been allocated for use, whether that be mining or grazing or timber or whatever the case may be. They've been allocated. They're no longer public by definition.
Okay, that's a great distinction there. And the fact that the federal government holds these lands and thinks of them as theirs is completely unconstitutional. They were never to have them. Once the state became a state, they were supposed to buy from the state whichever lands they wanted for, magazines,
Sure.
sports, dockyards,
Right, that's Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17 in the Constitution.
Correct.
It defines that completely.
Right. I feel like they've suspended the Constitution with the originally with the Reconstruction Acts of 1867, and then they've just gone on and added to that War Powers Act, and then the Buck Act, and things like that. And so when I hear people talking about there being lawmakers, no, they need to be law repealers.
Right.
I actually wrote to the Library of Congress, their Congressional Research Service, and asked them if the Reconstruction Acts of 1867 had ever been ended or repealed. It took them 8 weeks to get back to me. It was a page and a half, single space, and basically they said, look it up yourself.
Wow.
Yeah, they weren't even willing to say, no, they haven't been repealed. So this has not been a new fight. This is gradualism. They've been boiling the frog for a long time, and this battle has been going on in the West for a long time. And so this is just the latest part of it. And I see it being as full spectrum dominance, the fact that they reversed the Hage case. I don't know how familiar you are with the Hage case.
Very familiar.
Yeah. Were you shocked when they reversed it? this, right during the Oregon thing, I go, oh man, they're
No,
pulling out
I
all the
wasn't
stops.
shocked at all.
Yeah.
That's par for the course. They saw, how the previous judge ruled and held individuals of the BLM in contempt of court. And, at one point they were awarded, hey, just worth $14 million. Never saw a dollar of it.
Yeah.
And so, no, I wasn't the least bit surprised.
Right.
Under this administration, nothing would surprise me at this point.
No, and the fact that they said the judge, Robert C. Jones, said that the BLM's behavior shocked the conscience of the court, and he gave a laundry list of felonies against two of the agents, and yet they were never indicted, and a judge has arrest power. So I didn't think it was a very good decision. I mean, I thought it was at best a draw, and for them to reverse that really signaled me that they're not playing here. It's full spectrum dominance.
And so with all those things being known, and let's just take out the grazing concept. Let's just make it, let's just say grazing, let's call it the issue. And if you research the issue, if you were just a common person, just like me, or an average American that doesn't have interest in the West, let's say you're from Minnesota, and you started looking at the issue and just reading the documentation, the court law, the case law, everything that's been established, and take the Western ranching aspect out of it, how could you think any other way other than this has been a complete injustice all the way around?
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. I try to explain to people that aren't into a ranching culture that the Hammonds are in jail for mowing their front lawn.
Sure, exactly.
Yeah. So it's in everyone. It shouldn't be just. There shouldn't have been 3,000 people at the Bundy Ranch. There should have been 300,000. If people really understood this and would turn off their television and start doing their own research and quit listening to the brainwashing that they get, there would have been 300,000 people there, and there was no way that in this ambush. I mean, what do you make of this ambush? The fact that this wasn't a traffic stop in any way, shape, or form. It was an ambush. It was set up, and we're not even sure who all the police actually were. I think they're trying to hide the so-called shooter when it's shooters, to keep it from being revealed that they were actually IMF, some kind of force working for the International Monetary Fund is probably my guess.
And what's interesting about, I'm looking at a map right now of the ambush site. I screenshot this off someone else's page or an email that I've gotten. And if you see the highway, leaving out of Burns, and like I said, this is a screenshot of the map. And what I find very interesting, this happened on King Mountain, and Divine Ridge runs right down off King Mountain, right beside the ambush site. And so I think that says it all as far as who is in charge. And then I do believe that Lavoie may have even known and felt in his heart and in his spirit that he was going to be martyred for this cause. And that ambush site, and I believe, to the best of my knowledge, there were no warrants out for Lavoie's arrest. I could be wrong. Somebody correct me if I am.
No, I think this was warrantless.
Yeah, and so it was a warrantless ambush, and that's exactly what it was an ambush where they intended to murder anybody they thought they could get away with. And I think that we've seen, nobody was meant to live that was riding with Lavoie.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's interesting. Did you meet Shauna Cox when you were there?
I met her.
Your impression?
Well, seems like a very godly lady to me. Just, felt like to do her part, felt compelled to do her part, and was used wherever she was needed. So what an awesome story, and what an awesome person to sacrifice her life and liberty in order to help this cause.
And what do you think? I thought it was just, more of the federal court buzzsaw going to work here that they ordered her to remove her firearms from her home. Well, she's not a convicted felon yet, so she has every right to keep her firearms. Yet, that when they moved them to the son's shop at her daughter's house, we know the story of what happened there. And I don't,
Right.
maybe I read too many Ludlum novels or Tom Clancy books or something, but I'm sure they killed her son-in-law first and then created the scene to cover it. I think that was a message to her to sit down and shut up.
Yeah, I would. I definitely think it was a message. I don't believe in a, that was a coincidence at all.
No.
And so with that happening, that alarmed me as well as everybody else. Oh my goodness, what? This is a little strange, and so you start putting all these things together, and you know that there's something more at work here than what meets the eye.
Yeah, there's a whole lot that doesn't meet the eye here. And it's not even just minerals. It's not even just yellow cake, oxide that they're talking about. So before we go to what you think that the hope is for this thing, how it's going to, what people can do, if you have any ideas, I mean, I'm all ears. What your impression are of the other ranchers? I want to talk a little bit about how you evil ranchers in New Mexico have been endangering the jumping mouse.
Yeah, that I don't have that jumping mouse issue here, but I have 100 other species that are either endangered or on the list to be endangered. And so, as far as I know, you do your own research, but I don't believe they've even ever found that mouse. That they just think it lives there, and they're alleging that this is its environment. And I don't think they've ever caught a single one. I could be wrong. But I think they're just alleging it's there. I don't even know if the mouse really exists. That's something to look into because I don't know anybody that's ever seen one.
Yeah,
and I don't think the federal government has ever even tracked one.
It doesn't. It doesn't at all.
It doesn't exist. But that's the impression I'm under because I've never heard anything to the contrary that they've ever even found one.
Yeah, I know. It's amazing. This endangered species thing is just giving them carte blanche to take anybody's ranch for any reason or anybody's land for any reason. They can say, oh, it was Indian artifacts. It was this little minnow in the stream. That's why they said they diverted somebody's stream here in Nevada, in Ash Meadow here. It stole a stream that's been on their property for 150 years. Just insane. Just insanity.
Right.
It's bureaucrats gone wild. And
when they go to look and find these endangered species, such as the leopard frog and that minnow and other stuff, do you know where they go to find them? They go to livestock waterers that ranchers have built or created or established. And that's where these things live, right alongside with cattle every day of their lives. So I think that's hilarious when they go, when the only places they have to go to find these species are in somebody's dirt tank.
Yeah, what's interesting is the highest concentration of desert tortoises is today in southern Nevada is at the Bundy Ranch and on their rangeland.
That doesn't surprise me because I found the very same thing to be true, in this region, where if you want to find an endangered species, just go find some cows and they're living harmoniously together. The big thing about this is, this Endangered Species Act is turned into $1 billion enterprise for these people, Center for Biological Diversity and wildlife guardians, and they sue. So they sue the federal government over this animal habitat or whatever it may be to get them endangered. Well, there's not one time where they've actually taken this case to be ruled on by a judge or jury. They've been settled out of court for millions of dollars. And so they do that with every single species, and multiple groups are doing it. And so they're just making millions of dollars for sue and settle over this endangered species.
Yeah, just another shakedown.
Yes. And that's our tax dollars that are being paid to these people.
Yeah, it's absolutely amazing that we are funding our own demise here.
And that's exactly what Cliven said. When he said, I'm not paying you anymore to put me out of business. Because you've already put all my neighbors out of business.
Did, and did he tell you how
So
much
that's a great point.
they paid those ranchers for their ranches?
No, I've never heard.
Okay, you're sitting down, right?
Yes.
$75,000.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Their homes were worth more than that on the ranch. Not that
Sure.
doesn't count all the acreage that they had.
Yeah, just look. I mean, all you have to do is look up what the tax assessor's office said, and then you would have a fair market value of what those things they've been paying taxes on for years. And I can guarantee you it's more than $75,000.
That's damn straight. So let me ask you this: as a college educated, university educated rancher, with those classes, did you see this environmental agenda? Because I find like this is Marxist institutions straight down. That's how they educate, brainwash students. Did you see a Marxist agenda in the ranching programs you were involved in?
No, and in Texas and in Oklahoma, like I said, I'm 36 years old. I'd never even heard of any of this until I moved here 4 years ago. Never even heard of the Endangered Species Act. Didn't know anything about any of these issues. Was completely unaware. Nobody in college were teaching us. I mean, they were teaching conservation methods as far as your cattle are concerned and how to manage a herd. But over there, people aren't being put out of business by the government on the same scale as is in the West on these federal lands. Now, in fact, they are maneuvering to put private land ranchers out of business as well through this Waters of the U.S. rule and also now through the Endangered Species Act, where they're trying to follow through with that on private land.
Yeah, I've met ranchers from as far away as Kansas through the Bundy situation, and my friend said she met people from as far away as Georgia
Wow.
at the Finicum funeral.
In the last 5 and 10 years, I think it's everybody's feeling the squeeze now due to one regulation or the other.
Right. It's like the end game. I don't know if you're familiar with the situation in South Africa, but the Boers, that's the term that actually means farmers. The farmers are all being murdered, and the president of the country, since the ANC took over, actually sings "Bring me my machine gun," kill the Boer, kill the farmers.
Wow.
And so they go in
Yeah.
and they kill the Boers, and they're doing these land appropriations. So this is like South Africa light. They're just coming at it a different way. There they've given the population, the black population, permission, basically carte blanche, and incited them to go and steal from the white man, and saying that, oh no, they took your land, when nothing can be further from the truth. There were no blacks in South Africa when the Boers arrived and settled those lands.
Sure. Yeah, I am a little bit familiar with that, and that is, and it's a horrible situation over there.
Yeah, but it's a template for what's happening here.
Sure.
And it goes on. Gun registration led to gun confiscation. But you can go to the police station and rent a gun now if you want to go do a crime.
Wow.
Is that the stupidest thing you've ever heard? I know.
Right.
Absolutely incredible. So the situation. Go ahead.
No, we were just touching on earlier. What can people do?
Yeah.
What can the average American do? And I think the first thing you can do is start calling representatives not only from your state and governors from your state, but states where these issues are of more concern, and start your peaceful protest. By any means you can define, and whether that be for your gun rights or your religious freedoms or your land rights or your water rights or whatever it may be, but just everybody needs to start interjecting with whatever is affecting them. It doesn't have to be these issues they're in the West. The people on the eastern part of our country need to start standing up for their rights as well. And so I created yesterday, or this has been in the works actually since I discovered this wolf issue, and just sort of a resource where people and ranchers and patriots and anybody with like-minded interests could come together. And I call it Save Our American Ranchers. I created a Facebook a couple of days ago, and mainly the scope of that is where people can get good information. They can find out issues that are a concern to the ranching and farming industry. But also one thing I'm working to create is a group of men and women, range riders as I call them, who can respond in the event of a natural disaster, when someone is widowed, when there's a fire, when there's an illegal seizure of cattle. And what I want this group to do is come together and be a response team to wherever in the country that a rancher or a farmer needs assistance and needs help. And so I'm trying to get that going now. I've already bought my domain name, and we'll soon have a website up. People can donate. There'll be merchandise. And I've got 1,000,001 ideas on what to do. But we've really got to come together as a ranching and farming community to protect our livelihoods. And what most people don't understand is, America has been so great at so many industries throughout the history of our country. The steel industry, the technology. It goes on and on with things we've been great about, or been great in, and number one in, and led the world in. But one thing that we've always been number one in and still remain number one in is food and beef production. We are number one in beef production in the whole entire world. We feed every country in the world with our fruits and stuff of our lands. And so people today are so concerned about healthy food, and I think that America is shining bright in that respect, that we still are number one in food and beef production. And I see this as a direct attack to take that also, all those other industries have been shipped overseas and dispersed and moved, but we're still number one. But if this attack on our food system continues, we will slowly be degraded to lost in the pack, so to speak.
Well, we already have been, Adrian, for sure, because there's millions of head of cattle missing off the Western Range.
Yes.
Millions of head of cattle. And now people are more aware, so some people are more aware of how much better for you range-fed and grass-fed beef really is for you than, grain-fed beef.
Sure.
And so that's another thing. They don't want you eating anything healthy. Now, of course, all the vegans are going to, I'm sure your cattle is killed in a humane way, much more humane than it is on a feedlot somewhere.
Sure.
And so I think this is another attack. And we were importing beef. Can you imagine we were importing beef from Argentina?
Sure.
That's insane.
And that's just part of, North America and the trade agreements, NAFTA, and now this, the new TPP and all these other things we're in. We have to trade and do commerce, and that's the federal government's job. And I think everybody has been saying, hey, we're not anti-federal government. We're just for keeping them in place for the duties that have been assigned to them, and that they execute that and leave these states alone. We have a responsibility because we've domesticated these livestock over thousands of years. And now we've mapped their DNA. We've made them the most efficient they've ever been. Scientists and geneticists and ranchers and farmers have went to great lengths in order to ensure that we're producing the best product that science and that man has to offer. And we owe it to the livestock that we've domesticated to respect them as well.
I agree 100%. I'm looking at your page here, Save Our American Ranchers. And what kind of cattle are those?
Those are Angus cattle. And, I raise Angus, and also I have crossbred cows that are Angus Hereford. And so all of my registered Angus cows have been DNA tested. And so now through DNA testing, that's 99.5% accurate. And there's several factors of which that DNA has been used. You can determine milk production. You can determine docility. You can determine the size of the calf at birth. A bull's genetics now can be analyzed through that DNA and know that he's going to have the size of calf that a cow can have on open range. We know how much daily gain, we've made them efficient to where we know how much grass it takes to equal a pound of beef or a gallon of milk for that cow to raise her offspring. So I mean, and I'm no geneticist or scientist, but I can tell you the science that has been put into these cattle these days is phenomenal. And it's all for the betterment because it makes them all more efficient and more adaptable and easier to use and tastier to eat. So,
Well, you know, vegetarians all argue that the amount of food that it takes to feed one cow or a steer is like a waste of production, that we should all be vegetarians. What do you say to that?
well, if that was true, I wouldn't be in business. So, I've seen some of those and how much water it takes, and I know that those statistics and numbers they put out there have been proven wrong by the animal science industry.
Right. You know, we say lies, damn lies, and statistics, to quote Mark Twain. The three kinds of lies, right?
In so many situations, you got to consider the source. It's whoever's making up. It's pretty easy to make a statistic fit your narrative.
Exactly. And let's talk about the narrative. The narrative that they're using right now is that this was an unlawful protest, that these were armed protesters. You know, they burned down Ferguson and Baltimore over a protest, but those people were just protesters. And now the people, Ammon and company, and you and all the ranchers up there that was starting to wake up to this message, they're being deemed, militants, unlawful, armed, militants, armed militia, just demonized. And that's how they do it. They have to demonize people, just like they demonized the Branch Davidians before Waco.
Sure. Well, yesterday, the Center for Biological Diversity and the mayor and some business leaders and the sheriff of my county had a meeting more or less about me and Burns, and they were saying, is Silver City, New Mexico going to become the next Burns, Oregon? And I guess the main topic of conversation was with me about me. I didn't attend the meeting. I didn't feel the need to. Other ranchers did, and they did, ladies and gentlemen, did an awesome job of defending ranching industry here in our county. But what they did is they pulled some individuals that I'd had some small conflicts with out here on my ranch. And one of the main ones being there's an individual who was driving up and down my road and actually pushed my wife and son off the edge of the mountain on 2 occasions. He also totaled 2 vehicles by driving erratically out here on this road. And so after the second time of him running my wife off the mountain road we live on, I stopped this guy and I lectured him pretty good. And I guess you could say maybe I chewed him out, but I never threatened him. So he gets up during this town hall meeting yesterday and tells people that I was armed and he could smell liquor on my breath. I was neither of the two. But so what happens is I've got right now, there's a county road that goes through one of my pastures. And that happens to be the pasture that I'm designated to be in right now through my grazing schedule from the federal government, from the Forest Service. So I've got cows having little baby calves all over the place right now. Then I have these individuals who live out and around out here, driving 55, 65 miles an hour on a road that's designed to be driven 25 miles an hour on. And so they're trying to label me as violent or extreme because I will pull you over and tell you to and ask you to please slow down so you don't run over my dogs, my children, my wife, or my livestock.
Oh my gosh! And well, you're clearly an extremist. You want to keep your family safe. How extreme is that?
I know.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't imagine how anybody else could be any more extreme than I am.
Yeah. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And I wonder how much they paid that guy.
Yeah, I don't know. Somebody sent me that the CEO or whatever he is of Biological Diversity Center's tax returns, and it shows that he makes $200,000 a year. I make $30,000 a year. So I don't know exactly what's going on there, but these people are getting paid a lot of money to terrorize, demonize, and push ranchers off these lands that we have all the rights to.
Yeah, that's absolutely amazing. They have all the money. They control the media, the mainstream media. And what this has done for me, it's really helped me because I've said for a long time that at least 60 to 80% or more of the so-called alternative media is actually controlled opposition. And this
Oh wow,
situation in Oregon has really shown me who's who by their response to the situation and people that have been against it. And same thing with organizations. They think organizations should be standing with these folks and aren't. So it's been a good wake up call to find out who's who, on the internet. That's for sure.
sure, I completely agree. And you gravitate towards people that are telling the story because the main, you can turn on your TV any time of day or night through this whole ordeal, and there have been very small tidbits of info, by no means any accurate coverage through the mainstream media, which is sad.
Yeah, well, you know what? It's sad in a way, but if you're going to be a zombie, okay, fine. It's never been about the majority of people, Adrian. That's why there's a group called 3%ers. It was only the 3%, and people even say even less than that of the colonists that were involved in our struggle to be a nation. So I guess we can let the zombies go, but I'm doing a little campaign. As a matter of fact, I've got my tarp sitting out here to cut up. I'm making those 2-inch squares
Uh
that
huh.
were at Lavoie's funeral, and I'm
Yes,
wearing
ma'am.
them in all my clothes and keeping a pocket full of them. And when people ask me what the blue square is about, or I talk to them about it, then I'm handing them out.
Sure.
And so
And
because we need to wake people up about what's really going on. But it's I support what you're saying in one way, but the write your congressman thing seems to be it's too late already. This thing is so completely broken.
sure.
And vote for a better person. That's like saying we're going to get Jeff Gordon and Kyle Busch to drive our race car for us. And the race car
Right.
looks great, but you look under the hood, there's no engine, there's no transmission, there's no radiator. It's
Right.
just a shell. And it's time to get a new car.
I agree. And I say all that, and but I mean that's the least amount you can do. That's at the very least. Just do that. I mean, does it? If you ask me personally, what good does it do? I mean, I think it depends on where you are. I happen to have a very good congressman here, and he's been engaged on these issues um, since before Bundy standoff ever was started. New Mexico had their first cattle seizure back in 2004. The Laney family had their cattle seized off federal land, and it's a story that's out there, but it's little known about. And Mr. Kit Laney, he was in prison, um, and they gave him an assault charge on a federal agent because he rode his horse too close to one.
Oh, that poor federal agent. Well, you know what? Do you know what Sheriff Joe Lombardo? He's now the head sheriff here. I don't know.
Uh-huh.
He was just deputy then. He said when all those guns were pointed at him by the snipers at the ranch, that the hair on the back of his neck stood up. And
Well,
I
he was
go,
probably
good.
feeling very guilty.
Yeah, exactly. Like all the officers that all the people that Metro officers shoot during the year. Well, good. Now you know what it feels like to have guns pointed at you for a change. That's what I said. Time the internet trolled up this heavily, it was during the Bundy Ranch. Ugly, ugly things, and it's even uglier now. When you see the comments that people make, that government paid agents make about Lavoy Finicum, it's disgusting. I mean, they are heinous comments. No one would say, people wouldn't say that about Stalin when he was dead, much less a good man.
Oh, I mean, I've been appalled. In fact, I don't even read it. If I see something disparaging towards Lavoy, I just scroll on and keep going. Um, but you've seen the same sort of comments made to the Supreme Court Judge Scalia that just most recently died over in Texas. I mean, there's people saying horrible things about him as well. So,
I
I'm
know
not surprised by anything.
yeah, that's amazing. I'm amazed that you brought that up because that was one of my next questions. Obviously, this no autopsy, uh, saying that he was dead, what do we call that? Pronouncing him dead before they even saw the body. All that, very, very suspicious. And I heard a rumor. I don't know if it's a rumor that there was an assassination attempt on Justice Roberts. So that's kind of interesting too. So, but the New York Times has made it hasn't been shy about bragging that the Jews now control the Supreme Court, and so obviously they want it to be even more draconian, and with the loss of this man. So hey, it happened in Texas. Now wait a minute, we were talking about the great state of Texas, yet the Kennedy assassination,
Yep.
Dallas, Waco,
Yes.
Texas,
Yes.
Judge Scalia now, Texas. I hear all kinds of corrupt, them molesting women when they stop them on the road. I mean, police, just terrible. I mean, kind of things. So what's going on with the great state of Texas? You seem to have as much corruption as the next guy.
Well, I think anywhere the federal government is in place and is concentrated, you're going to have corruption. All those issues, but maybe that issue where the lady was pulled over there in Texas by a state highway patrol officer. Is that the one you're referring to?
Yep. And there's been several of those, right?
Yeah, there have been, and so I think as a whole, there are a bunch of good people there, and I think that we have a governor who is very anti-federal government. It's such a large state that there's going to be corruption, and in every level of from the city government to the federal government, or from the county to the federal government. But with Waco, as you just mentioned, that was federal government siege.
Yeah.
This issue with Scalia, though, that took place, about an hour from Marfa, Texas. This is a very, very remote part of Texas. I visit there often because it's kind of close to me.
Is that West Texas?
Yes, it's very far west Texas, yes.
Mm-hmm.
So that's an hour maybe from the border. There's one more town between Marfa and the border, and it's Presidio. So if you've ever been in that region of Texas, I mean, you see border patrol everywhere, drones. They put these balloons up in the air with some sort of ability to survey land and stuff like that. So, as much law enforcement and resource that are down there, I find it hard to believe that nobody knows anything. Even though it is very remote, it's very heavily looked after. And so, yeah,
still doing that interview.
Doesn't pass the litmus test on this either. It's the same as
all right.
Sean's son-in-law. This deal is just as fishy, but with an individual who's way, more high profile. So it's a little disturbing.
Yeah.
Who is safe anymore? Is anybody safe in their own bed? I don't think so.
No, I don't think so either. This is Bolshevism. I mean, this is what they did. There are at least probably somewhere between 60 and 80 million white Russians killed by the Bolsheviks, and yet we never hear about that. Where's their museum? No. And they did it. They have the same strategies, same thuggery. They just have more high-tech gadgets these days. That's all. That's the only difference between these people, in my opinion.
And there's the technology that we know about, and like you said, the gadgetry and the weaponry that we know about. So can you just the weaponry that we don't know about?
Oh.
I mean, I can't even imagine what's out there that we don't understand or comprehend.
Exactly. And it's a full-scale attack, full spectrum dominance with, geoengineering, GMOs, all the pesticide issue, vaccines. I mean, the list goes on and on. They're killing us 6 ways to Sunday and actually just dumbing us down and making us sick. They don't want to kill us because we're too valuable to them sick.
Sure. I'm sure you're familiar with the fluoridation of water all over the United States.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, that's a huge issue.
And here's the interesting part. The interesting part about the fluoride issue to me, Adrian, is that military bases don't have a choice. And they always say, "Oh, Hitler fluoridated the water." No. Hitler didn't do it. That was Stalin. he fluoridated the gulags because it saved him 70% of his guard payroll. It made the people very docile.
Right.
So I think they want to keep the military docile because people go in with a patriotic, I'm going to serve my country, and then they find out they're not serving their country. They're serving the Zionist empire and going into countries and killing innocent people. And so they keep them very docile that way. I think then they take the sociopaths that they created and put them on the police forces and what have you, or with merc organizations like Blackstone and Blackwater, whatever it's called, Academy or whatever they're called these days.
And we do know that those mercenary forces are present in Oregon.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And the fact that the Oregon State Police were trained by Israelis, and some of their top people were trained in Israel. So that's surprise. What a surprise that is. Yeah, right.
That AG that prosecuted the Hammonds. I was reading a story about her. She was educated from a university in East China.
Oh my God! Is this for the second prosecution when they got him for the Yeah, that's amazing. Amanda Marshall.
Okay, yeah, she was reading. There was an article written about her in the High Plains Journal. It's a farm and ranch journal, and they say in there that she was educated over in East China. That's where she went to college.
Yeah, she was raised on a commune. Her dad left at a young age. I mean, so yeah, just really, and she's on some kind of disciplinary leave or something because she stalked a colleague, a subordinate, when he broke off a relationship with her.
And it's all these little things, and and unfortunately, the Hammonds, they have kind of been overshadowed by all this other controversy. So we really need to pay attention and concentrate on really bringing them up in all the dialogue that we have, because that's the reason Ammon and Ryan and the boy went to Burns to begin with, and I see them really getting lost, and so we just need to be conscious that we always memorialize and remember them, and also shed light on their story.
Right, and get this turned around. And I think, did you have an opportunity to meet Sheriff Glenn Palmer from Grant County when you were there?
I didn't.
Okay. All right. I was just wondering because I know Ammon had been to a meeting with him before. So, I mean, I think it's really fascinating how they are trying to throw him under the bus and the Oregonian. So this is an orchestrated event that we're seeing. It's not just on the fly. They have got this thing well under control and well planned.
Oh, there's no doubt about that. And I don't think, I would just like to know the resources, the taxpayer dollars being allocated, for the psyops and for these mercenary soldiers and for all this big buildup in Burns. What is it going to cost, and why are they doing it?
Well, it's got to be running at least as much as the Bundy Ranch was allotted, and the Bundy Ranch was $7.5 million.
Wow!
They only spent $5 million because they shut it down early, but they had $7 million budgeted to collect a fake debt of $1 million that Cliven doesn't owe. Cliven doesn't owe a dime.
Well, I think this will be $20 million with this deal in Burns because they've ramped it up. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, did you see that? I mean, it's doubled, I think, since you were there. But what was your impression of the military buildup when you were driving through Burns?
I mean, I didn't. It didn't even feel like America. It felt like some paramilitary state. I don't know. It was uneasy for sure.
Wow. And so you met the ranchers up there. I know you're now friends with Tom Davis. He was on last week. Have you talked with Tom the last couple of days? I haven't. I may give him a call today to get an update from him. What do you hear is going on up there still?
Complete militarization, searches, complete invasion of privacy. That committee of safety, I've been told, not by Tom, but by other sources, they're being followed by the FBI everywhere they go. They're being harassed. The FBI is calling their personal phones, harassing them over the phone. So they're not letting up on these people at all. The people who are trying to, peaceably protest.
Yeah, that committee of safety is an interesting function, and it'll be interesting to see if that can hang together. But I think the other reason that they're going door to door and being so jackbooted is because of the common law grand jury, the secret
That's
members
quite
of that.
possible. That is quite possible. And I haven't heard anything from Joaquin in a while. I hope that he's okay.
Yeah, and I'd like to get a hold of him. If you can help me get a hold of him, I liked his Facebook page and whatnot. That would be
Okay.
great, because I'd like to know more about that. Because what I see missing in the grand jury proceeding, in the common law grand juries, is the enforcement arm of it. Who's going to enforce it?
I think that's what they're working on right now.
That's what I understand as well. So that's awesome, and we got to pray for them all the time. And this whole fear thing that they feed off fear and anger, and so that's why I put out a little tapping thing. And I just want to say, go to my YouTube channel, everybody, and see the tapping for freedom. It's just energy work. It's how we rewire our brain. I believe we create our reality, and so that's why they work so hard to program us with television and media to get us to create their reality for them and agree with them that all is lost. Oh, they're such a force. We'll never be able to win against them.
No, you can see that. I can see that in my own family members. Just that one point I'd like to touch on is by me moving out here, I now live off the grid, and I live on well water, on private well, and we've, since my son was born, we've really turned the TV off, and I'll watch some DVR programming, so I don't have to watch the commercials. Those commercials now that are out there have so much propaganda built into them. But I would just like to challenge your listeners to start turning your TV off for days at a time. Make sure you're taking and drinking clean water, and then let 4 or 5 years go by. And what I've seen in my own self and in my wife is that, wow, your senses become more awakened. I hear better. I see better. I'm more conscious of weather patterns, or when the breeze changes. I just feel like I'm more in tune with the world or with nature. And also, I've been strengthening my spirituality and praying more and reading more in the Bible and learning more. And so that's one thing I would challenge everybody to do is turn the TV off.
Yeah, I'm shocked when I've never been a TV watcher since I was a kid. Probably since college age. I haven't watched television. There's a television here. I don't even know how to turn it on.
Right.
Really.
I talked to a man the other day who hadn't watched television in 15 years, and he turned it on, and I said, well, what did you see? And he said, I saw sex everywhere.
Yeah.
He says, I cannot believe how much sex is on television. I'm blown away.
Yeah, I remember I sat down. My friends used to laugh at me. I'd go over to their house and they'd have television on, and I hadn't watched it in so long. I was just shocked. And I go, that's on primetime television? It's like pornography right here in your living room.
Sure.
It's incredible.
Sure.
In the propaganda is, like you said, is absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. So yeah, turn off the television and start thinking again, because the TV puts you in an alpha mode where people just take things in. I know people that watch television just like your friend, just to check in and see what the propaganda is, but they watch it with a critical eye. They're not sitting there, like zombies taking it all in.
No, I remember in college I took this advertising class, and there was this chapter in our book about the psychology of advertising, and it touched on charts and graphs and how to sway, and so that class or that little chapter in that advertising book has really stuck with me, and so I can really be analytical when I watch a television commercial or read the print ad.
Right.
What exactly are they trying to you into believing?
Exactly. So yeah, Edward Bernays, he was the father of it, how to manipulate people. So let me ask you this about let's see, where was I going with this? What was your? Did you watch any of the live feed last week? It was just a week ago yesterday, and in this morning, of them rounding up the last 4 people at the refuge.
Yeah, I think that footage. I think it's controversial. Um, I saw a live feed of Mr. Fried at one point where he set the camera up and they were signing talent releases. I don't know if everybody got to see that, but they gave, you could hear them talking about, just sign here. This is just a talent release, and that was a week maybe prior to when they came in there and got them.
Yeah, like talent release. Like, since when do you need talent releases?
Right. And so, there's some things that throw some flags up through that. And I know that amount of pressure that they were under at that time. I can't even imagine that would be very scary situation, scared for your life. It could be, and all the build up to it.
And lack of sleep.
I met David personally. Mm-hmm. And I never saw the side of him that was displayed in that live feed there in the end. So I was shocked because this looked like a completely different person. He was so mild and meek and nice to me, and that was what I got from his personality. So to see him completely flip and become so outspoken and disgruntled. That was a shock to me. And so, some of his grievances, each individual has the right to express their personal opinion. I just don't know if that was, I hope that he was under so much stress. I think that he may have said some things that looking back, he wished he wouldn't have.
Yeah, that could be. And the others and the whole situation, if that was staged. Well, I said if these were crisis actors, if this was staged, well, at least they're hiring a higher caliber of crisis actors, because the parents at Sandy Hook couldn't even shed a tear. So they're a much higher caliber actor. And so
I know some people that know Sean and Sandy, and they seem like really genuine, real people.
Yes.
But, at any point, people can become compromised.
That's right. And they may have been real, and they may have been, just trying to hold the fort there. They were instructed to do that. That was the first message that came out from Ammon was hold the fort. I don't know if that's real. It came out, and then he said, go home to your families. So they may have just gotten the first message. And I do agree with David Fry that he said he's done with the movement. He said, where are all the militia? Where are they? Why aren't they here to help us? And I really couldn't disagree. I don't agree with his doctrine, but I couldn't disagree with a lot of the other things that he shared. I mean, he's one of those people to me that can't compartmentalize. He's one of those sensitive people that if we really look at how horrible things are in the world, we would be in tears all day long and upset. But we are able to compartmentalize it and go on with our lives and have a little joy in the day and whatnot. And he's the type of brain chemistry that apparently isn't able to do that most of the time, especially when he's under stress. So I don't know if well, whatever it was, they sure played it just right to draw Cliven up there. But like I said to Carol Bundy, I said, Cliven had to be miserable sitting here. Survivor's guilt with Lavoie dead, Ammon and Ryan and all these other people in jail. He had to be miserable sitting here. So I actually think he's probably a little happier in jail right now.
Well, I don't know about that as far as him being happier in jail. But, at least he made his point known, and he did go. I would have advised him against it. I wouldn't have walked into the lion's den. I think that battle was over. It's time to regroup and focus our energies and talents and resources in not a completely other direction, but through a different manner.
Absolutely. Well, I called Skipper at the ranch that afternoon and said, where are you guys? And he said, we're at the ranch. And I go, oh, great, because I'm reading that you're supposed to be traveling with Michelle Fiore up to up to Oregon. Because no, yeah, we were invited. He was invited, but he declined to go and stuff, and we advised against it. And he just went on a whim. Just it got too much for him and left and didn't feel the setup that was there. So
Right.
yeah, it's a shame. I mean, he's on the no-fly list. So how do you get out of McCarran? They wanted him in the Portland district because that's where they can completely control the judiciary.
Sure. It makes all the sense. And sometimes you got to you have to outthink your adversary. And I think that was a poor decision. I don't want to see anybody wrongfully locked up, but when you walk into their trap,
Yeah.
now all we can do is pray and allocate resources and hope that I think he's going to be returned to Nevada on Friday. So at least he'll be back in his home state then.
Oh, that'd be great.
Because that's where his charges are all from Nevada.
Yeah, and they're ridiculous charges. A firearms charge?
Right. He never carried a gun.
I
Who
know.
did he assault?
No one.
Right.
They're going to say, oh, it was conspiracy. He incited all these other people to, they were just standing up to tyranny. And let's make this point. This is driving me crazy. If one more person says federal overreach, I think I'm going to hurt someone. I mean, overreach, that's like saying, oh, you didn't say please when you said pass the biscuits. I mean, what?
Right. That's when your waiter, sticks his hand in front of you to pick up your plate.
Exactly.
This is way beyond overreach.
Yeah, this is tyranny, plain and simple. Yeah, I know. Thank you. I'm so glad you agree with me on that. So, all right, and I think a letter writing campaign. We need. I've got Jason Patrick's address, but we got to start a letter writing campaign to everybody too, just to give them something to do.
I believe that I posted all the people who are wrongfully imprisoned right now on Save Our American Rancher Facebook page, and there's many their numbers, their addresses, and how to reach and contact and provide financial assistance or whatever. I believe I posted that last night. There are also many other people out there that are posting and staying abreast as best they can with what's going on. So, look up one of those groups, get in one of them, stay focused, stay poised. There's one thing that, that every morning are kind of my marching orders, so to speak. And that was a message that I received from Lavoy. He sent me a text message the day he died. And I didn't get it till the day after because I have poor phone service where I live. And so I actually received it on Wednesday, January 27th at 3:14 p.m.
Oh, that must have been a very emotional text message.
I headed to get my mail, and at which point I cross an area of the Continental Divide where my phone gets signal again. And I looked down, and I had a message from Lavoy, and it was one of those moments where, I don't know, I guess I haven't had very many in my life, but I know my jaw was wide open, my breathing, my heart rate elevated, and I actually started to cry reading this message. And it took, even though I know that that's the case with my phone, and I understand, but I was in such shock that it took me probably 5 minutes to realize. By the time I read the message and called my wife to tell her, I was like, okay, that's why I got it, now instead of yesterday. And so if you don't mind, I'll just read that text message.
No, that's on my list of things to do here today. So go right ahead, Adrian. You brought it up at the perfect time. Thank you.
And it says, this is from Lavoy, like I said, Wednesday, January 27th. I received it at 3:14 p.m. Just checking in on you to see if all is well. Hope your wife and children are well. Let us know if you need any support. Now that you are engaged, it is probably the safest course to stay engaged and win the hearts of the locals. Then you will have close allies. Again, please let us know if you need any physical support. Stay armed. Stay safe. Sincerely, your other dad, Lavoy.
Well, if you can talk after that, go right ahead, because I can't.
So, that's what I go by every day. And then so that's my MO.
Well, I
And
think,
I know that
yeah.
that sets the perfect course. That doesn't just apply to me. That applies to each and every person that that is aware of what's going on and that believes in the continuance of Lavoie's legacy, the trail that he was blazing, and so I think it's very important for us to all realize that when you're informed, it's important to inform your neighbor, inform your family members, and since we're all engaged, to stay engaged and to stay safe and to keep going. Don't let fear um, and stuff scare you from continuing this message and fighting for freedom. That's what the boy wanted. He wanted us all to stand and fight.
Well, I have to continue to give Lavoie such, and Jeanette, amazing amount of admiration here and support, because here they cut their financial legs out from them by kidnapping the foster children from them.
Yeah.
And I think, and that was a message to them to count the cost, sit down, and shut up. But righteous men are hard to intimidate.
Yes.
And so he kept going. And
righteous he was.
Yes.
In every degree.
Yeah, I and the family to have 11, children, grown children, of course, but in 19 grandchildren without this man. He was only 55 years old and in perfect health, strong, perfect health. I mean, he would live to be, 85, 90 or beyond. I mean,
sure.
they stole so much from this family.
Yes. So, now when you start counting the cost, you see what the Finnecums have lost. You see what the Hammonds have lost. And these are real people. And they're just common, God-fearing, warm-blooded Americans who their freedoms are being annihilated. Their lives are being taken. They're being imprisoned. It's so radical that I can't even fathom that this is going on. I mean, every day it's a reality check of what is going on.
It seems like it's surreal, isn't it?
It is. It is. And, I don't know, it maybe why so many people aren't engaged is because it takes a lot of energy to engage in this. It really does.
Oh, it's incredible. It's a full-time job just keeping up on the news of it and what's going on.
Sure. And every day, I don't know what the twist is going to be today. I haven't been on social media because that's the only place that there's any news at all. Mm-hmm. Shows like you, and then I know Michael Lynch. He's really fighting hard, especially for the Bundys right now, to try to bring awareness to their cause.
Right, Dennis Michael Lynch, right?
Yeah, so, I mean, the sources are very limited. But like I was saying, who knows what the twist will be today? Because each and every day it's been something, unbelievable.
I know, it's like, it's incredible. So it's time really to continue to be in faith. I had someone almost calling me in tears the other night, saying that all is lost and he's so angry and upset. And I go, pull yourself together. This is just the first round. I mean, this isn't over. It took the founding fathers 15 years before they went to war, before Lexington and Concord. And so we're just in the initial stages here. And I know the way that they're ramping this up against us and locking things down, they see it as the end game too. They're very, very worried. So they must feel how tenuous their hold on us is. Else they wouldn't be going to these measures to put this uprising, rebellion, revolution down.
Right. And many of us, like you said, it took 15 years before they went to war. And so a lot of people that are heavily engaged now won't be here for that. And let's hope it never comes to that. But, I know someone's legacy, Lavoie's legacy, will never be forgotten. My legacy, the roles I played, they'll be overlooked and overshadowed and already are by the Finnecum sacrifice, by Jeanette's sacrifice, by his sons and daughters' sacrifice, and for what he gave us, and what they lent us to him, this whole cause, and God blessed them, and I thank them from the bottom. I thank them every day. We are one of his family members, and I know that the boy was definitely chosen for this task, and I know that he fully embraced it, with all that he believed in, and with that, with all his spirituality and love for country, and LaVoy's legacy and LaVoy himself will never ever be forgotten.
No, I will take my remembrance of him into eternity.
Yes, me too. Me too. And a lot of other people will too. I was so amazed at the outpouring of support, from Washington State to Washington, D.C., and from, other countries and every state in the union. There were so many memorials and things dedicated to him, and still are. There's a nationwide protest March 5th. There's a national group. You can look into that.
Right.
Join it. That's one way you can start to stand up. Peaceful protest. Join one of these protests on March 5th. That'd be a great way to show your support.
Right. Yeah. Let's continue to wake up our friends and neighbors, and just know that we can win this thing. We really can. And we're in a very dark hour, but I believe that the light is being shown here, and that they are not invincible. Otherwise, they wouldn't be putting down such a jackbooted offense in Burns right now.
Sure.
I mean, it doesn't call for that. I mean, you'd think they've done something a little lower key or something, but no, to have this show of power just tells me how tenuous they feel like this is.
And now that the standoff, so to speak, the protest has ended, there's not much light being shed on what's going on in Burns. Well, somebody from the media really needs to get up there and document the aftermath, because it's just as important and vital, from the beginning up until the very end. And I know that Mr. Davis has told me that it's going to be 30 to 60 days, they're saying, before they ever leave.
Wow.
Well, I don't understand that.
Yeah. Why? Because it just, we live in opposite land, Adrian. Whatever they say, it's the opposite. If they're there for peace, they're not there for peace. If they're there for your safety, they're not there for you. Look 180 degrees and you're going to see the truth of the matter. And so they've lied about this thing the whole time. And, you can tell, even the fact that they're over there planting evidence right now while we speak at the wildlife refuge, and trying to say, they dug latrines near they're the ones that desecrate, Indian artifacts. I mean, it's ridiculous. Right. And so I know the reason they kept the grand jury secret, when it wouldn't let them attend their own grand jury proceeding, it was because and kept the charges sealed. It's because they don't have any charges. They're making them up as they go. Sure. Yeah, it's really disturbing. But hopefully a light will be shined on this, and I believe that there's an almighty, all that is, source, whatever you want to call it, that is in charge of all this, and we need to agree with him. I don't know what your Bible says, but my Bible says, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. And that when we pray and ask, believe that we've received. So we need to get a victorious mindset here, and not that we're going to, that we're all that. We need to be humble about it, but know that there's a power in us that's connected to this almighty, that's put us here. That's my take on it.
I completely agree.
All right. Oh my gosh, you give me a swell head.
Right. I don't care what you call him, but please be lifting up prayers.
Right.
Because
well,
now is the time to be in prayer.
Exactly, and pray from a point of victory, and believe that the Almighty is going to show His hand here. We have seen it over and over again. We're coming up on short strokes. I didn't know how long you'd be able to take with me today, but I so appreciate your time. I know you're heavily involved here, and your family's not there, and you've got a ranch to run, and man, so you sleeping between like 2 a.m. and 4:30, or?
Basically, yes. finally can wind down, and I feel like all the news is over. At about 2. That's just kind of the time it's been time to lay down at that point. So just trying to stay up on it every day. And like I said, every day it changes. Who knows what today will bring?
Well, Adrian, I got to, off the cuff here a little bit. I've got to say, when I met you, I was like just trying to go, who is this guy? I know this face. Do you get the fact that you look like Gary Sinise all the time?
No, I get Blake Shelton a lot.
Oh, Blake, I can see that too. I can see that too. Okay. Yeah, they kind of look alike too.
I say, of course, I'm better looking than Blake Shelton.
Well, of course you are. Of course you are. That's great. Okay, so everybody, we want to just to go over your website again. It's Save Our American Ranchers. Go to that Facebook page, like it. Now, I was getting off Facebook. I was going to end my account, and then the Bundy Ranch happened. And so I said, all right, if I'm in for a penny, I'm in for a pound. And so now I'm using it as a platform. It saves the government money. They don't have to surveil me in other ways. I'm right there, open and notorious for them. So go on, everybody, get back on Facebook. Save Our American Ranchers. Let's support each other and support what Adrian's doing here. Adrian, your courage impresses me. I'm so happy that you had an opportunity to meet Lavoy in person, and just for your role in this entire thing. Let us continue to be in touch, and let me know what we can do to support you, okay?
Thank you. God bless you.
All right. Take care. Okay, we're going to wrap that up.